Black Americans envision the future of this country? Historically, Black public opinion was severely underrepresented in data, going all the way back to 1790 when Black people were considered 3/5 of a person. In the 2020 census, nearly 46 million Americans were identified as Black or African American. However, more than 3% were undercounted due to the pandemic and political skepticism. That's a problem because census numbers determine where federal resources go. NPR reports that $1.5 trillion is allocated to education, healthcare, and transportation based on census results. So if we aren't counted, that's funding that we're missing out on. But data is a critical tool for bolstering Black political power, especially as voting rights are attacked and anti-discrimination policies are dismantled. So how do we make sure the numbers reflect us? We know the problem. Now let's get to the root of it. I'm Paris Alston, and this is Rooted. One way we can make sure data reflects us is to collect it ourselves. The Black Census Project does exactly that. It's spearheaded by the Black Futures Lab and is the largest census of its kind. It's collected data in 2018, 2022, and in 2026, organizers have a goal of 300,000 responses. We spoke with Alexsis Rodgers, who leads the project, about why having this data is so important. Alexis, thank you so very much for doing this. We appreciate it. We are happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So tell me about the census. How is it different from the federal census that we already have, and what exactly is it looking for?
Sure. So the Black Futures Lab launched the Black Census Project in order to understand what Black people feel about what time it is, right? How we feel the government should operate, how power should operate in our communities, what values we want to see at the center. Because I don't have to tell you or anybody listening that we're under a lot of attacks, but right now it's important that we fight for a future that actually centers our needs and our values. And so with the Black Census Project, we're listening to 300,000 Black voices. We want to hear from a diverse group of Black people about where we want to see this country go. So you can go to blackcensusproject.org and take the survey. It takes about 10 minutes.
So this is the third time that the Black Census is going out. The first time you got 30,000 respondents. The second time there were 200,000 respondents. And this year you're looking to get 300,000. That's in comparison to the federal census, which has gotten 46 million Black people to respond. So what exactly is this one picking up on that the federal census is missing?
Yeah, so I like to compare what we're doing to organized listening at scale. So while the federal government might be just trying to understand where people live, your basic demographics, the Black Census Project is really getting into where do you want this country to go, right? How do you want money to be distributed in your communities? What benefits do you think the government should prioritize? It's giving Black people the opportunity to design the future, right? And I think when we think about power and how power operates in our community, we know that a lot of times decisions are being made without Black voices fully represented. The Black Census Project gives us the opportunity to really say, this is what we think the future should look like. Here's how power should operate, and we design what comes next.
And I know that in 2023, the summary from that Black Census found that low wages, gun violence, and poor education were the top 3 concerns for Black people. So what exactly does having this data accomplish, and what changes have you been able to see come out of previous censuses?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, some of those concerns that we heard in our 2023 version of the census aren't surprising to anyone, right? These are experiences that we feel and see in our communities day to day. But what we did after hearing from 211,000 Black voices in the last census is we put out an economic agenda. The Black Economic Agenda is a state and local policy roadmap that helps local organizers, policymakers move towards solutions that address the problems that we're facing in our communities. So in Southern Georgia, for example, where folks named affordable housing as a top concern, our organizers and community leaders on the ground have started designing a campaign called Our Homes, Our Future, where they're fighting for eliminating junk application fees when you apply to rent a home, rent an apartment, eliminate, those junk application fees. You might apply and you got to pay $50 and then you don't get approved for the apartment. and you're out $50 and you don't have a place to stay still. As well as fighting to improve the conditions of homes in your community, as well as expand more access to affordable housing. We've seen in Milwaukee where they're advocating for participatory budgeting, which is also a solution outlined in the Black Economic Agenda, that they were able to get the local government to agree to give residents the ability to directly direct where tax dollars are going. This is a solution called participatory budgeting, where the community gets to decide, hey, this is how we want $300,000 to be spent on sidewalks, on bus stops, on a new childcare solution in my community. And these are really important interventions that help Black people have more power and agency in their communities.
And I appreciate that you kind of gave us that geographical view, because it speaks to the fact that there are different needs in different parts of the country, and that the Black experience is different in different parts of our country. And we also know that Blackness is different across the diasporic spectrum, right? So I'm curious, who exactly is counted as Black in this census? Because we hear all the time, right? It's like, is it Black people of all the diaspora? Is it foundational Black Americans? How do you define it?
Yeah, so we want Black immigrants. We want Black folks who can trace their ancestry back to 1619, right? We want everybody who calls himself Black, who identifies as Black, to be a part of the Black Census Project. This is our effort, our gift to the organizing movement to say, we have heard from a diverse range of Black voices across the country who live in Puerto Rico or live on the coast in California or in Boston, right? We want to know from everybody, what is your Black experience and what are your Black dreams? And we're going to have, from the results of the Black Census Project, the ability to really say, hey, this is what the Black immigrant experience looks like. Here's what they're dreaming about. Here's what they want the government to look like. Here's what Black folks with disabilities feel. Here's what Black folks who are LGBTQ feel. And I sense deeply that we're going to see a very unified message across these different identities and perspectives. And we're also going to be able to highlight what are unique needs within our community. I think that's so important for policymakers to be able to understand, hey, if I'm advocating for something in Nebraska, here's what Black Nebraskans want, right, versus Black Californians, or any other kind of demographic that we'll be able to see reflected in the survey.
Now, I hear what you're saying about it's a quick survey, easy to access, at least if you have access to a computer. But how are you reaching people who may not be able to do it that way?
Yeah, just this weekend, actually Juneteenth weekend, I was up in Harlem talking to people about the Black Census Project. Outside on a beautiful plaza. It was a beautiful Freedom Weekend. And I spoke to many people who were like, hey, my phone doesn't have Wi-Fi, or, how can we make sure that we're hearing from diverse voices, just as you named. Spoke to a gentleman who doesn't read. And so we're meeting everyone where they're at, right? I literally read the census to someone who wanted to take it, but who didn't, who couldn't read, right? And we're going to do that in every community across the country. Want to hear from people, whether they have access to their own technology and are going to, sit up at a library or on their phone and take it, or if they need to be met in their community by an organizer like me, who's going to sit with them and talk to them about why taking this survey is so important. In the past, we've partnered with organizations who do outreach to folks who are incarcerated, right? People who are returning home. And again, we want to hear from everybody, regardless of where you call home right now, regardless of your access to technology. We're making sure that the Black Census is accessible to everybody, because we can't have a vision for our future that is only rooted in a limited segment of the Black population. We want to have a robust data set. And something that I would say also is that a lot of times when you're seeing reports, surveys, I don't have to tell my friends in the media, a lot of these news surveys that they're coming out, the sample set is maybe 200, maybe 1,000 people on a good day. And when you're narrowing down to actually just the Black population within that, it's a very small set. So I think the power of the Black Census Project is that we're listening at such a large scale to Black voices that it really is an opportunity to have a real clear picture of what Black people want. And I'm excited for the results when we get there.
And at the same time, Alexsis, there are people who are skeptical of any sort of data collection, right? Black people specifically. How do you get them to trust you?
Yeah. I think part of the way that we build trust is by being an organizing group on the ground year to year, right? So as I mentioned, when we did the last version of the Census Project, we put out a policy agenda, and we've been organizing alongside community members across the country to achieve those policy goals. As you said, a lot of Black people are losing faith in institutions and don't trust anybody with their data, understandably, right? We're in an environment where our data is being used to surveil, to kill, and to threaten our communities. So I do understand why anybody would be skeptical about where their data is being distributed, how it's being collected and used and manipulated in some cases. Our trust is built by, I would say, again, being on the ground, organizing in communities, having powerful validators like our founder, Alicia Garza, who a lot of folks in movement trust, right? And I would say that as we move forward, I think that we're going to see a lot of, even already in the results, we're seeing that a lot of Black people are losing faith in institutions. We always ask about trust in various institutions like small businesses or labor unions, police, military, local government, local elected officials. And even in the early results, we're already seeing that trust scores are way down compared to past years. And so I think the fact that people are still trusting us with their data speaks to their faith in us as an organizing group that's going to focus on their issues and only use their data for good, right? We state explicitly in the survey before you take it that we're not using your data to inform AI. We're not selling your private information, right? We're using your data to build Black political power.
And what exactly does that mean? How does data inform and build Black political power?
Yeah, so something that I constantly remind people is that we can't have collective action if we don't have a shared reality. And I think that the Black Census Project helps us create a shared reality of what is a shared Black experience, right? And again, Black people aren't a monolith. We all have unique experiences, and none of us have had the exact same life. But when we put all of our dreams and visions together at scale, you're going to see something that does, I think, have some common themes, right? Already we're seeing in early results that a lot of Black people are naming getting debt-free as their number one dream. They just want to get debt-free. They want to live outside of that shoulder of debt. I share that dream too. I'm paying down some bills right now. Right? You know what I'm saying? There are other people who are saying one of their top dreams is improving their physical health. And I love my gym routine, right? What I'm trying to say though is that when we are able to have a collective reality that, hey, we're all fighting for the same thing, we can move differently, right? We have one dream that we're fighting for together. Maybe my sister in Alabama, I never met her. I now know that she also shares a dream with me in trying to get debt-free too. And her path to getting debt-free might look a little bit different, but we can fight for a government that actually centers our dreams at scale, right? We can be new founders, we're saying, of a democracy that actually prioritizes us. We're coming up on the 4th of July, and I think a lot of people are thinking about what it meant at the time for the country to come together under the formation of the federal government 250 years ago, right? And I wonder how many of us are sitting with the fact that those 250 years ago, they weren't thinking of an America that looks like it does right now. They were centering themselves and they were creating a government that kept those interests in power, right? Here we are 250 years later. We live in America that is unimaginable to those people. And frankly, we're living under a system that still centers those unimagined dreams, right? What would it look like for us to create a new vision? And that's what we're doing with the Black Census Project. We're building towards something that actually centers the people who are here now, centers the people who have most been oppressed by the systems that were created by our founding fathers. And we're going to design something I think that's beautiful, that's freeing, and I think very inspiring towards where we want to go.
I hear what you're saying, Alexis, but at the same time, we are living in a moment, right, when we're getting attacked from all branches of the government and frankly, all branches of society. And so how do you how possible are those realities in a climate like this?
It's a tool of our oppressors to keep us in such a form of defense of being under attack that we are not able to stand up, much less fight back. Right, we're not able to have the freedom to dream. And it has to be an act of resistance, actually, to find joy and to dream for our future. And so as much as it may feel unrealistic sometimes, I have to remember that all this year we've seen what feels unrealistic actually become possible, right? We've seen ICE out of our cities as people have decided to create systems of care and mutual aid. And did we see a lot of harm lead up to that? Absolutely. But we also saw people show up with their neighbors outside in the ice and the snow in Minneapolis and create systems of care that actually centered their needs, right? And what if that was sustained? What if it wasn't just a moment in rapid response, but we actually were creating systems of government and systems of community that were meant to hold us for the long term, that were meant to make sure that, hey, I don't have to worry about kid drop off and kid pick up because I have a system of collective care that I've created with my neighbors in my community where I'm only on Tuesdays, and every other day, I'm cycling around with my friends in my community to make sure my kids are cared for, right? And I believe that is real, and I believe that Black people have always been designing for our futures, right? We've always been creating systems within systems that don't support us. We've been creating systems that do, right? And so this is just at another level. We're asking 300,000 Black people to come with us into a dream for the future and to build with us towards that dream until it becomes so.
Now, I know that you have a history of running for office, mayor of Richmond, back in, was it 2020?
2020.
And 2020. And tell me a little bit about how data helps in an instance like that, right, where you're trying to go and represent people, and you need the data to back it up.
Yeah, funny story. I actually, when I was running for mayor in Richmond, I was not yet working at Black Futures Lab, and I only kind of knew loosely of it. But as someone who is an organizer and advocate deeply rooted in my community, I was looking for specific policy solutions that address the issues that I was hearing from in my community, like how housing wasn't affordable, like how the bus was too difficult to navigate and to get around in the city. How it was hot in some parts of the city and people were, trying to figure out, hey, can we get trees to have more outdoor space, right? And I looked to actually Black Futures Lab and Black to the Future Action Fund for that policy roadmap. And again, at the time, it was, I think, called More Black Than Blue, the report that came out that was outlining different policy solutions that would support achieving a more fair and representative democracy for Black folks. And it included policies for local leaders like myself who were trying to address zoning issues, trying to address blight and housing concerns. And it was a great resource for me, right? And that's what kind of the dream is for us. We want people who are running for office who are already down and trying to ride with us, but maybe just don't know what is the specific solve, right? We actually have done the research, we've worked with community to create a specific policy roadmap that you can pick up and run with. So you can be an expert on, like I was, workers' rights and reproductive health care issues, and expert on my community. I know where people live and where people work and how people get around. But hey, I actually don't know these specific things, and that's okay. We don't want, knowledge of specific policy issues to be the barrier for people running for office. We want people who reflect our communities to be able to step up and run and lead. And that's what Black to the Future Action Fund and Black Futures Lab seeks to do.
Alexis, I'm reminded of Data for Black Lives, that movement some years ago, right, where we were seeing a lot of data about Black death, especially as we were dealing with the unjust police killings of unarmed Black people. And I'm curious your thoughts about how data can be liberating. Like we've talked a little bit about how it can be empowering, but in what ways can it free us?
Yeah. I think one thing that is really important is that it can tell our stories more accurately. I just know so many times we're hearing stories about our communities that just aren't fully true. They're not fully rooted in reality, and they're driven by a narrative that just doesn't fully reflect our community. So when I think of even some of the reports that you might hear out of Baltimore, Chicago, where we have Black mayors leading and reducing crime, right? People are still thinking, oh, Baltimore, I've heard a story once, right? And what would it look like for data to come out of Baltimore that shows the truth and helps us shape actual narrative around what's happening in Baltimore and what's happening in Black communities across our country? We'll be able to shape a new reality, a new understanding, again, of what is actually happening in our communities, what our dreams are, what our aspirations are. And I think data can be liberating. Data has a lot of times been used in an extractive way to take from our communities, to design political power around our communities. Oh, Black people live here. Cool. We're drawing the maps differently, right? Black power has been diluted by using data. In the same way, Black power can be built by using data. And that's what we're doing at Black Futures Lab.
What's your long-term vision for this census? Do you hope it gets as big, if not bigger than the federal census?
Oh, man. I hadn't gotten to 45. I mean, there's 45 million-ish Black people, right? So at some point, yeah, it'd be great if we had every single Black person in the country taking it. But I think, as a goalpost, right? If we got to 1% of the Black population, 10%, right? Like kind of over years growing towards that would be huge. And I think the bigger dream, honestly, is that over time we're seeing the material change that has happened because Black people chose to come together and dream together. People ask me all the time, is it really possible to create a new democracy? Is it possible to change the material conditions that we're facing? And I have to choose yes. In the same way that people created this country, it can be recreated, it can be refounded. We can pick up and start again. And I think that, honestly, that same spirit is in the spirit of America, generally speaking, right? Like, people pick up and have left their country and started something entirely new here because they believed something was possible. People have picked up and started a business because they believed in what they were trying to do. They moved across the country and found new friends because they believed it was something they can do. And I believe just that deeply that we can do the same with our democracy. We can pick up and start again. And I think a lot of times that pickup starts from a moment of crisis, like what we're experiencing in our democracy right now. It starts from my back is against the wall and I have no other choice but to try something new. And we might be in that moment right now, America. Like, we might be in a point where it's like, yeah, we starting something new. And I've actually been really inspired that energy is not something that's just sitting in policy circles. I've been even just going about my life, at the movie theater and just kind of hearing conversation where people are saying, like, yeah, man, stuff is so hard. Like, we should just start over. And I think sometimes people think that's just talk, right? We're just saying, let's start over casually. But I think that actually, that spirit, that energy is really palpable and people are ready to try something new. And I hope that by taking the Black Census Project, they can help us start something new.
You're talking to someone, Alexis, who's been thinking a lot about annexation in this moment. So we'll have to have that conversation another day. But before we let you go, Alexis, I'm curious if there is a favorite piece of Black data that you would have to share.
I mean, honestly, even so far, just in looking at this year's results so far, it has been so interesting to me that Black women and Black men have different dreams. And I think like, that kind of maybe seems normal, but it's also very interesting when you look at overall, again, getting debt free is right at the top of the list. But Black men, we're talking about our health. And I think a lot of times people don't think about Black men thinking about their health in a real way. And so seeing that Black men are saying, my number one thing is I want to be healthier is really, I think, interesting to me. Black women are more so right now naming, again, being debt free. They're talking about their economic conditions a little bit more. And so I think this is going to be interesting to see how all of this data comes together. And I think, again, kind of knowing that we're not a monolith. We have different dreams. We have different aspirations. But when we have a shared reality, we can move together. And I'm excited to see what that shared reality looks like for us.
What are other forms of Black data collection that we can trust?
People don't think of this as data, but like real conversation with your neighbors, that's like real data collection. You know what I mean? Like, I think, talking to the people in your community about what's happening to them and really understanding what your neighbor's experience is important. I think sometimes we get so glued to our phones and reading news reports and hearing what's happening outside. But when you actually sit down with somebody across the street from you at your bus stop, or just spark a conversation at the coffee shop, like there is something that is unlocked in just having a human-to-human connection with someone and learning from their experience. I have a tradition in my community with a group of friends. It's about 5 of us. We've been friends since elementary school, and every Sunday we have Sunday dinner, and that community for me is so important, but I'm also hearing and learning from literally some of my best friends every day. Just knowing what is your lived experience at work that is different from mine. And I wonder if we had more communities like that where people just were in deeper relationship, what kind of society we'd have.
Thanks so much to Alexsis Rodgers from Black Futures Lab for sharing how a Black census can help shape Black political power. Imagine what kind of future we can have when nearly 300,000 Black American voices are heard. And if you'd like to be one of them, you can take the Black Census at blackfutureslab.org. Well, that's it for this episode of Rooted. Be sure to keep up with us on our social channels. And until next time, stay represented, stay rooted, and as always, stay tuned.